Hey, yeah, I'm talking to you. Wuthering Heights. This took me 4 months to finish. It's a dense read. Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte, not to be confused with Charlotte Emily. Wuthering Heights. So, this book is really tough to get started, but once you get started, once you get through the first third, then it gets good. So what do I mean? So, pretty much the book, here's the summary. So you follow this guy called Mr. Lockwood. Mr. Lockwood is looking for a place to rent in a place called Wuthering Heights. I believe the place that he lives at is called Thrushcross Grange. Yeah, so he lives there, and then the landlord is a guy called Mr. Heathcliff. I don't think his first name's ever revealed. I don't know. But yeah, so Heathcliff, he's the landlord, and then you learn, once you meet Heathcliff, we also meet his butler. Not a butler, it's not a butler, but that's the closest resemblance to the word I'm thinking of. You meet his butler, Mrs. Dean. Living with them is a girl called Kathy, right? And that's his niece, but I guess very complicated. So then we follow through Mrs. Dean's recount of what Heathcliff was like when he was young. And then we kind of go through the whole story through like several different frames. So there's like the original narrator frame. There's like just the general story frame of narrating Mr. Lockwood. We get Mr. Lockwood's perspective, then we get Mrs. Dean's perspective, and then even through Mrs. Dean we get like Catherine's perspective. So there's lots of different framings in this book, and it's interesting because when I read Heart of Darkness is a book where it's a modernist book and there's lots of different framings. Whereas this is a more, I think, a romance book, as in like capital R, romantic book. So I don't know whether that actually came into play earlier as a technique, because it does cloud the kind of what went on in the book. So anyway, before you read this book, know that just learn the characters. Look up on Google Images the family tree, because it gets, and it's hard to not look at spoilers, because you'll notice if you look at a family tree that the characters die and you think, oh shit, like I wanted to see if that character lived or not. It's really annoying. Here is a brief rundown. You've got Mr. Earnshaw. He's like the father, the old father, the original landlord. He has a daughter named Catherine and a son also named Earnshaw, and then that Earnshaw then has another son called Earnshaw. Then Catherine marries a Linton, and so she becomes Catherine Linton. And then she has a daughter. Catherine Linton has a daughter called Kathy Linton. So it just becomes very confusing because you've got Kathy Linton and Catherine Earnshaw, which is also Catherine Linton. And then Mrs. Dean, the butler, will be referred to as a different name when you go back in time. Whenever they go back in time, it's not really clear when they do. You won't notice when they switch the narrators. There's a website called Course Hero, which I think if you're studying this book and your comprehension is like mine, where it's pretty shit, you definitely need to go to Course Hero and like watch the chapters. That man is a legend. I can't thank him enough, because he got me through this book, because I got so lost 1/3 the way through, but he picked me up to speed. And then every time I'd read a chapter, I'd be able to go to the Course Hero and he'd fill you up on like what the stuff you missed, because there's a lot of stuff going on and it's hard to pick up on it all the time. Okay, so once you get past because the first third is pretty much like it sets the stage, sets the characters, it establishes who they are and why you should care about them, and then once they've kind of gotten that sorted, then it kind of gets going. And so I finished, it took me 3 months to get through the first third, and then once I got through the first third, it was like I got through the rest in a month. It's interesting, there are lots of different characters, and it's hard to choose a favourite, because again, like how I referenced in Dirt Music for my last book review, none of the characters are particularly good. One thing I will say, a character I f***ing hate is Catherine Linton, or Catherine Earnshaw. She is such a bitch. I hate her so much. I think Heathcliff is also pretty annoying at times. I think Edgar Linton is probably my favorite because he's just like, Edgar Linton is the father of Kathy Linton and the husband to Catherine Linton, and I think Edgar really is just kind of like trying his best. He's boring. He's a bit of a bookworm. He's like me. So yeah, I guess Edgar doesn't really do much wrong. He's not like that charismatic, but he's not like, whereas with like Catherine's just such a, she definitely a that. Because she fucks over like Heathcliff and Linton. It's like, just make up your mind. She's the root of like all the problems in this book. I don't care what the your teacher says. If she isn't in this book, then all the problems get sorted. If you can have an excuse to point out all the flaws in Catherine Earnshaw, you should, because I think I don't like her. And she's so rude to the like Mrs. Dean. She's so rude and so ungrateful. And again, I guess that's supposed to be on purpose because her daughter Kathy is actually a lot more empathetic and a lot more, she's a lot better of a person than her mother. Heathcliff is kind of an asshole. I think it's interesting how Earnshaw and Heathcliff do, even though they're foils, they actually are quite similar when it comes to being an asshole. Yeah, there's a lot of drama in this book, there's a lot of death, and it's interesting because you'll never know which character actually dies. It does make it like for example, there'll be a story and then all of a sudden a character dies which you just wouldn't think would die out of nowhere, and then it kind of switches things up, so it does make it quite entertaining. I love the aesthetic of like 19th century England, and I'm a big fan of Jane Eyre as well, and so that was another reason I liked Wuthering Heights. It's more just kind of like that vibe. The Moors, the way they talk about the Moors, I think is pretty cool. That's just more a personal thing. Major themes, it's interesting because I feel like this book is almost like you could compare it with something like Jersey Shore, or like, and that sounds really fucking weird, but hear me out. The whole point of Jersey Shore is that you watch these like people, or like let's just say Love Island or something. Yeah, it's a lot like Love Island, and I think the reason is that like you have all these people stranded in an isolated area in England, and like you see you see all their flaws and how self-obsessed all of them are, how self-motivated all of them are, high ego a lot of these characters are, and you see all their flaws and you see how they clash with each other. And I think that's probably a big theme of the book, about like having these big obsessive egos, something I have problems with too, but it's interesting because apparently if it's in a novel it's like, oh, it's so remarkable and intelligent and subtle, but if you watch Love Island it's like, oh, like you're just a peasant. No, but I think it's kind of like the same premise where like you'll have, like you watch these people interact and you notice their flaws. Like I think their flaws are what really stand out, and that's what's supposed to stand out. Yeah, there's just a bunch of idiots. All of them, all the characters. Yeah, they just make decisions, you just go, what? Like, was I satisfied with the ending? I actually think so. I think I was pretty satisfied with the ending last I can remember. I read it about 3 months ago, so it's still not quite at my, I'm guessing the ending didn't really last with me then. But yeah, as far as I could tell, it was a pretty solid ending. Would I recommend reading it? I would recommend reading it, but just know that first third, like getting to know all the characters, is quite tough. There's a lot going on, it's very hard to comprehend. I would feel like you have to be more of an advanced learner to read it, because I wasn't, and so, but if you feel like you are, then yeah, I'd probably give it a go. I don't know, man, it's just kind of like, if I had to rate this book out of 10, might give it a 7. Yeah, I'd probably give it a 7, but like, obviously an English teacher's gonna like disagree and say it's like a 10 out of 10. But like as a book to read is concerned, it's pretty like hard to get your head around. There's some pretty interesting lessons to learn, I guess. Like, I'm not too sure what the core message is supposed to be. I think it's more just like how, if I had to say there was a core message, it's just kind of like how being self-interested and kind of egotistical can kind of get in the way of relationships, which I think is very important to learn and understand. I want a mansion in England. Where is it? But yeah, that's pretty much it from me. Let me know if you'd want me to read a book in particular. I think I'd like to review Jane Eyre as well. These books are more books I haven't read in a while, so I'm sorry if this hasn't come out the way that is a bit more entertaining. But yeah, let me know in the comments if you're reading this, because I've only got 5 subscribers, so I'll be able to see your comment. I'll notice. But yeah, like, it's a pretty good book. Just kidding. Yeah, look, I mean, I didn't vibe with the book as much as I'm sure a lot of other people did. So if I missed a lot, or I missed like a core message, then yeah, like, hit me up. Subscribe if you haven't, and get ready for the next book review coming soon.